I'm here with Dr. Brook Choulet, and there's a lot that we can dive into on starting the conversation today. We like to keep it, a little bit sports related, but a lot of mental health and sports, and that is right up your alley. It's exactly
Yes.
what you do here at your own practice. So before we get into some of the, topical conversations, do you want to go ahead and share what it is that you do and what your practice is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a concierge sports and performance psychiatrist, and I work with athletes of all different levels. So anywhere from age 5 plus all the way through professional, mainly on more of the therapy type issues. So
Okay.
low self confidence, imposter syndrome, that perfectionistic tendency that many athletes have. And then if medications are indicated, then I can prescribe those as well.
Okay. So what is it that kind of sparked your interest in going down this path in this field?
I never initially intended to fall into sports, but what happened was I opened this concierge practice and I found that a lot of athletes wanted to be seen in their home.
Mhm.
So they did not want to be seen in a traditional office setting, or if I was seeing their children, the parent, that's the athlete, didn't want to be seen in the waiting room. So I kind of fell into the sports world through the types of services that we offer here.
And when you started kind of opening those doors and seeing, what it was like for pro athletes and athletes at different levels, with trying to create this awareness around mental health and performance, what were some of the things that maybe surprised you that you learned pretty early on?
I think the biggest one is the difficulty with setting boundaries with the people around them, right? So
Mhm.
you and I don't walk around with our salaries posted publicly,
Right.
but a lot of professional athletes do.
Right.
And then you have everyone from family to friends to old friends to extended family coming to ask for something, right? So every relationship starts to feel a bit transactional. And then oftentimes they're made to feel guilty or bad if they're saying no to someone or not buying someone a home that's in their family or a new car. And that can lead to a lot of internal kind of turmoil.
What are some of the things that you tell them about setting those boundaries? Like, what are some of the ways that you kind of help them? I guess I'm assuming step one is become aware of them, and then
Mhm.
from there, kind of move forward.
Yeah, and kind of detaching yourself from that guilt factor. So, a lot of athletes that I work with, especially male athletes, tend to be more passive than assertive, which is interesting because in their sport, they're so assertive and
Right.
even sometimes aggressive. But then in their personal life, they're so passive and really have trouble setting boundaries with the people around them. So, that's kind of step one is identifying that they are speaking in a passive manner or not asserting their true beliefs or wishes, and then helping them start to feel comfortable to do that without feeling guilty.
I think for those that haven't been around athletes, that is kind of shocking because you watch them on TV or at a game and you see them being these alpha males that are
Mhm.
out there being the best at what they do. They're in the top 1% of the 1% of whatever they do, baseball, basketball, soccer, whatever it is. But that life being different and
Mhm.
navigating them themselves as a person, I think people often overlook that because they just assume the way I see them on TV and maybe in interviews is exactly how
Mhm.
they're going to be if you were to meet them in person, and that's just not the case, huh?
Right. And it leads to that level of entitlement for fans, right?
Mhm.
Because then you see them as a performer and you might see them in public in a restaurant, for example, and then you feel entitled to go up to them and ask for an autograph or ask for a picture, whereas that's their own personal space outside of their sport.
So that kind of dives into it. It is kind of timely. We saw it happen in Chicago last week
Mhm.
with Cattell Marte, and he's saying things about his mom after she had passed away and stuff like that. So when you talk to athletes about fan behavior, because I've been around enough now, former athletes and current athletes,
Mhm.
and it's if I see them on the sidelines, this isn't a knock on any sort of fan,
Mhm.
but hey, the grown man asking for an autograph when there's a bunch of kids around, they purposely will skip them because
Yeah.
they're doing it for the kids and stuff like that. But what are the ways that you kind of see athletes navigate the diehard sports fandom that kind of takes their personality away from them and just
Yeah.
use them as a betting prop or a player for their team, and that's
Right.
it.
Well, the digital age is nice in a way, right, where they can disconnect and choose not to engage in that noise. So
Hmm.
when they have fans DMing them saying you lost me $100,000 because they placed a bad bet, a lot of athletes will just use a social media manager so that they don't even see that.
Hmm.
So in a way, digital noise is easier to disconnect from than like in Chicago where that one comment gets through. Right, because in a stadium or a field or an arena, when people are shouting, you can't really hear those individual comments. It's just noise.
Hmm.
But then when that one comment gets through, it can be really harmful.
Yeah. And then I think there's other layers to it, that sparked awareness of, okay, it's not just the athletes getting them, it's their wives or their kids, and maybe they don't have the social media managers.
Right.
They're running their social media. I know especially baseball, the WAGs is a big thing of, it's a whole social circle, and they kind of deal with that. Is that something that, athletes bring up as a concern, or do you also work with their families navigating how to, be a part of this?
I love working with spouses or girlfriends because
Mhm.
yes, the athlete's struggling with a lot when they're on the road and dealing with performance pressures, but they're leaving their family behind because of their job, right? They're not intentionally abandoning them, but yet it can feel like that sometimes to the spouse that is left at home with children or that has to pick up all the other pieces of their life to continue running the household. And so spouses do carry a lot of weight emotionally and just that demand of running a household, and that can be really hard too, feeling like you're single parenting or doing it alone.
Have you come to learn maybe that over time, as they work with you and others in your field, that they start to see themselves as more of a regular person? Because I think that, sports in general, it can be very easy to feel like you're not just a normal person, and you're not at what you do, but everything else in your life is,
Yeah.
fairly normal. Do you see that kind of breakthrough happening with certain athletes, or not really?
Yeah, it's tough because a lot of them kind of their identity is intertwined with their sport, right? So that's why when they get a season ending injury, it can lead to things like anxiety or depression because if you see your whole self as your sport and then that comes to a screeching halt, it's really setting you up for poor mental outcome of your injury. Whereas I encourage people to really see themselves in other areas too, like as a father, enjoying certain hobbies and being a provider for your family, whatever it is that brings you joy, so that if you have all these other pieces of your identity, when that injury happens, it doesn't feel as like life altering.
I mean, I think you hit a really fair point there. And I learned this for a while. I experienced it as a former baseball player, the UCL injury to, the typical, that's when your career's
Yeah.
over, and that's how it goes. But, you see it with athletes. Like last year, the Diamondbacks, Alec Thomas, a weird hamstring injury. I think I talked to him in June or July when he was trying to come back, and it was the most depressing thing. I was debating even playing again. It was just one injury that I rushed back from because my identity was so tied into it. And it took what should be a couple weeks, it took them a full year plus to really come back from. So when you see athletes that tie their identity into it and then injuries like that pile up, whether they're career ending or not, how do you kind of help them? You mentioned, being a better father, being there in different ways. Like, how do you help them kind of navigate the other parts of their life?
I talk to them when they're doing well and they're healthy, right? Like,
Right.
what are other things you enjoy doing? What are other passions you can pursue? And Kevin Durant's a great example. He is not only an NBA player, but he runs Boardroom, right? A media company. Danica Patrick, while she was racing, she started a wine company or I think a candle company. So these athletes are showing us that there's more to them than their sport and experiencing that they're not as good at everything else as they are as their sport. So I think it helps with teaching life lessons and setting themselves up for success after their sports career ends.
Is that one of the primary focuses when you're working with athletes or looking for athletes to work with or when they come to you? Or what are sort of the primary things that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
The primary thing is their own self-talk, right? So are they having positive self-talk, affirmations, things that are helping their performance, or are they self-critical and having negative self-talk, which is actually derailing their performance? So I really like to first dig into how do you talk to yourself, what thoughts do you have about yourself as a person and a player, and then see where we go from there.
How often do you find yourselves with maybe higher level athletes that are actually coming in with that sort of negative talk, whether it's because they're in just a slump or whether it's because they've always kind of been that way and they haven't learned that yet? Like, is that something that you see a lot of, or do you see more and more athletes already starting off with a pretty good foundation?
I see it all the time that they come in with that mentality of, if I just watch one more hour of film, I might be able to do better. If I could be like X, Y, and Z teammates, then I could do better. And just starting from that really critical standpoint.
Right. I mean, I think it's fascinating because what people don't realize with athletes too sometimes, a lot of times they get by just on pure athleticism and luck, frankly. I mean, there's all kinds of talented athletes that don't make it to the levels that these guys make it to. So when they are someone like that and they maybe haven't developed, some of these things that you're working with their mental performance, what's that like for you when you're kind of opening the door to, hey, maybe you shouldn't beat yourself up so much on this, or maybe it isn't about that extra hour of film? Like, how do you kind of open that door
Yeah.
for them?
I love working with athletes that are at that beginning of that journey
Hmm.
because you just see their world changing so much, right? A lot of times when these guys come sit on my couch they're like talking about their feelings for the first time to someone that isn't judging them, doesn't
Hmm.
want something from them. It isn't a transactional relationship. And you really see them open up in a way that they haven't for 20 plus years. So I find that really enjoyable to help someone from the beginning work on their recovery routines, work on making themselves better, not only physically, but mentally, and just seeing that trajectory of change really quickly.
Is your work here primarily with like professional and collegiate athletes? Do you work at the high school level or just people in general? Kind of, what is
Yeah.
your kind of scope of work here?
Yeah, so I would say 40% are executives, founders of companies, C
Okay.
suite, or working professionals like
Yeah.
doctors or attorneys. 40% are athletes that are either youth athletes, professional athletes, collegiate athletes, somewhere in between,
Mhm.
aspiring athletes. And then I would say 20% are kids and spouses. So I really enjoy working with the whole family.
I think it's interesting because I've learned throughout this, the mindset of executives and high level athletes are very similar in my
Yes.
experience and conversations. So is it very much the same principles when you're working with them? Is
Hmm.
it different? I know obviously the lifestyle is different, but high level executives, they might be away from home a lot.
Hmm.
They may be in super stressful situations where they're not meeting their quarterly expectations or
Right.
whatever, and they're trying to figure out how to not beat themselves up. Is it a
Hmm.
similar sphere?
It's really similar, just in different environments. And also in corporate environments, you have a team, right? It's similar where you have to navigate those dynamics and you're
Mhm.
spending a lot of time with those people, even more so than your own family sometimes, and navigating the pressures and expectations of everyone above you in different roles to below you to family. So there's so much overlap. I really like working with just high performing individuals in general.
So if someone's watching this right now and they're saying, okay, I'm climbing the ladder right now in the corporate world, or they're in high school and they're seeing they're probably going to be a college athlete and maybe beyond, what would you tell them about trying to find someone like yourself and how
Mhm.
important that is to kind of continue pushing forward in a healthy way that, creates a better life in general?
Yeah, I would say not to give up because there are great therapists out there are great psychiatrists out there, and then there's also ones that might not be a fit. So
Mhm.
just because the first person you see doesn't feel like the right fit, don't be afraid to keep exploring until you find someone that does make a difference.
How do they reach you if they're interested in booking with you?
Yeah, through my website, brookchouletmd.com. It has my direct email and my direct cell phone number, so I'm easy to get a hold of. Yeah.
Direct, so you're probably getting calls and texts all the time then, huh?
I am, yeah, but I love
Okay.
it. That's what concierge care is removing that barrier to
Mhm.
accessing care.
So you'd set your own boundaries on that though too? I know you talk about it with athletes,
Hmm.
setting boundaries on being asked a lot. I'm assuming you're being asked a lot as well, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I set good boundaries with my patients, and
Mhm.
I love them dearly. I care
Mhm.
about them as people, and it helps them to have boundaries set for them
Mhm.
of like, I am not a diary, right, where
Right.
you just dump your emotions on me, right? Because I want to set you up for success and help you learn the tools to navigate this on your own.
Awesome. Well, Brooke, I really appreciated this conversation. You taking the time. Is there anything else that you'd like to say or that you wanted to share and get out there?
I think just people need to focus on developing grit, right? Which
Mhm.
is really the combination of having passion for something,
Mhm.
yet maintaining perseverance. And so, regardless of what setting you're in, executive, athletics, whatever, if you can maintain and build grit as a foundation, then you'll be successful in the long run.